We're here at the New Order of Fashion Lab in Eindhoven on our final day of the spinning residency, where you've been creating a lot of exciting samples. So we're with HELEN, our lab manager, SARA from Studio HILO, Max, who's a textile artist from Sweden, and I'm PAULINE, a design researcher. And this residency has been all about hand spinning, spinning with the HILO machine, and we focused on a particular material, cellulosic yarns. Yeah. Helen, do you want to introduce why?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, as New Order of Fashion, come from this fashion background, and we see this big upward trend, and because we have a focus particularly on sustainability, moving towards circularity, we want to see how we can use post-consumer fibres and yarns to produce new garments, new objects, whatever. And so this has really been a focus on man-made regenerated cellulosic fibres, things like tencel and circulose, and we've been focusing on how to produce fancy yarns out of them. So we have really high-value yarns and things made out of them.
Well, Max, you're an expert in handcraft. You were kind of teamed up at the beginning with TINEKE, who's not here at the table at the moment, but she spends a couple of days with you working on hand spinning with these fibers. Can you maybe tell a little bit about those first experiences, cellulosic yarns, and with also TINEKE's experience of hand spinning?
Yeah, so I think it was very, very fruitful to work with her. I mean, she has all the knowledge since many years. So I think for me to understand how these fibers behave, and she was really a good help. To spin a yarn from short fibers is very different from spinning one of long fibers.
And what were the challenges? Because we talked already about fiber length. I think this is quite a critical aspect.
Yeah, this is what we had to work with. And prior to coming here, I had only worked with longer fibers like wool, silk, linen, and those. Yeah, it's in my fingers in a different way. So for sure there is some limitations to these shorter ones. I mean, you can even tell by the industrially produced yarns that they're a bit what do you call it? They're weak, and that is because of the length, of course. We started out making, TINEKE started showing how to make some fancy yarns, like slab yarns, which are consisted of like thick and thin parts. For example, when making a slab like this slab, the thick parts cannot be longer than the length of the fibers. So that, in that sense, the fiber really decides also.
Define also the design.
Yeah, defines. Exactly.
So it was a lot about figuring out these initial parameters that you can work with, really.
Yeah. Exactly.
And how do you feel about the material quality, like beyond the fiber length, just the touch and feel, or tactile sensations of some of the yarns that you were able to create from them?
I think they're quite nice in their own way. I mean, one of the fibers we work with, this one, already has some color to it, and that of course makes us, it gives its touch to. We have some examples of like clear yarns, so we try. But for me personally, I like to work with the circulose. I thought it was very nice to work with. It also produces kind of almost like mercerized effect. And I think look-wise quite similar to cotton yarn, like a mercerized cotton.
There is a luster inherent in the yarn, but you have to kind of bring it out by preparing it in the right way.
Exactly.
I think a lot of what you started with TINEKE was in fiber preparation as well. We have I mean, this is industrially carded saliva. It's combed even, so it's been produced so it's really very smooth. It's very, you know,
Even,
it's
yeah.
even. It's quite
It's
straightforward.
like
to
you're
skin.
ready to go.
It's ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas these type of companies, these very new infant companies, because they're really only in their early kind of batch production of the fibre, they're not even at a point where they can share pre-prepared saliva with us. It's really like, oh, you can have our fibre and see how it works.
Good luck.
Yeah, really, yeah. And I think something that we've really struggled with also this week is understanding this fibre length. And like one of our questions to the world, and say outwards and to these companies as well, is to say, is there a way that you can produce these fibres longer? Because we understand that they're being made a certain way because commonly they're blended with things like with cotton, because the market demand for recycled fibre is to be blended with things like cotton, because we're still...
It's only a percentage in the end that ends up in the garment as recycled.
Exactly, and there is no need to produce a longer fibre that would therefore, in theory, mean a higher quality fibre, maybe with greater luster or different qualities, because there is no market demand for it. You know, that the high fashion brands aren't really using this type of cellulosic yarns in their collection. So that's really why we were also looking into fancy yarns, but beyond just this kind of industrial production, because these post-consumer yarns are produced industrially, but they have this kind of dull quality. They have just by the process of industrial spinning, the way that they are produced, it reduces the shine, the luster, the depth of quality as well. It's really, and because it's an industrial process, it has to be produced this way. It's like we can't do these kind of micro changes.
And maybe this is also, logical way, but we can find new
alternatives.
directions for these materials. So as a designer or creators, if we work with these new materials, new fibers, we can discover new aesthetics, new ways to create yarns for more high quality textiles.
It really opens up the creative scope, I think, because of course it's fine, it can be beautiful to create a very simple t-shirt or pants from these more homogeneous, relatively dull yarns, but I think if we look at what's on the table, then suddenly there's a whole different avenue to be explored, and also different types of products and garments that you can imagine.
Exactly. Actually, that helps in the translation to this kind of industrial thinking as well, because like the industrial machines don't make these huge art yarns, they do make more refined uniform.
What's super nice to work also with the HILO is that you can really try something and see like what comes out, and you can make changes in the settings, and all of a sudden something changes in the art, and then from there on you can continue to produce that yarn. I guess this kind of instant reaction to like what you're, a small change can really, it works the same way as your hands in that sense. Only that the same process by hand would take much more time.
It was really nice from my side to see how we started looking. We take a look in the hand-spun yarns and all the samples that we did with TINEKE. We tried to find a way to translate this, transfer these patterns into the HILO spinning machine, and it's this like almost research phase where you do like go deeper and deeper, and you understand deeper the process, or better how you should set the machine. You understand better the fibers, and then it was really nice within the residency to see, as you said, the obsession. Let's make it thinner and let's make it faster, and it's really nice how at the end we really understood how the fibers behave, and to search for these limits with the material and the process, because this is always working together. And at the end, we achieve like a really nice samples and experiments and a palette of yarns, and I think this was really nice also to kind of like combine the HILO spin, like the digital process, with spinning with the hand. So we create yarns to then later bind them by hand or other way around. So we kind of like combine these two worlds of crafts, handcrafts,
Yeah, it
and
doesn't
machine.
have to be either or,
Exactly.
like one of them, but it could also be like a process of using them both.
Exactly.
There's like a dialogue they have
Yeah,
with each other.
absolutely.
And how much of the fancy effects, which we were after, of course, like how much of those effects that were made by hand, you think could be successfully translated or transferred to the HILO?
Some of them, and we try some, like this one, and
This is really a way to say, come on, like, it's a way to think about
Scale
it,
it
like,
up,
we scale it up.
So I guess this potential here in this this type of yarn
Is
also
it like a chain? Or what technique is used there?
This is like a spiral.
Spiral. Ah.
Yeah, so SARA made one of them is thicker and one very, very thin, and then when you buy them, it makes a spiral.
I see a lot of potential for fancy yarns, totally, and also, as I said, this combination between hand and HILO spinners, like this combination. And I guess, or what we believe, or what we want to achieve, also with our studio, is actually create materials, create samples to start a conversation with the industry. So to say, okay, this is possible. I guess also with these fibers, maybe a way to go to the companies, or go to the textile industry and open this conversation through the samples and materials, and show them, oh, maybe there is another ways, another aesthetics that we can follow, and try to convince them to produce like a longer fibers, materials, and maybe open the product portfolio.
Yeah. What would be the first two things that you would like to put on the agenda if you were sitting with this kind of like industry, player?
It's about to invest more in innovation, maybe, I guess, really try to, together with the design team, try to collaborate more with designers, creators, and also handcraft to really develop new solutions, because I guess this is for me the biggest problem in textile industry. It is like you're always looking in one direction, and I guess
But
we need
maybe
more
also
players
very
in this conversation.
disconnected from this, you know, like so you have, I suppose, for a fancy yarn you would have a specific machine making that specific fancy yarn.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I can imagine that's the way it works.
Yeah.
And we also had conversations about this connection with actually making yourself and understanding that, how that helps you understand the machine and why it does a certain way. So maybe, I think from my perspective, I also think that the craft aspect maybe is missing in industry.
It's like they're serving too much the kind of like large volume and like quick wins with, you know, just adding the recycled in a certain percentage, and then we check the box kind of.
Yeah.
Yes, and I guess maybe there is a room for, I don't say that's like an industrial process that we have to change all of them, but maybe open new spaces for alternative products, which maybe is a limited edition of a specific fiber, with specific designers, with specific focus or purpose, but like open new spaces for this alternative products and production.
Yeah.
So it's not either or, but kind of like a
Next to each other, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I had a question which I think also translates to the industry as well, but for both of your experiences as well. What was it like working just with a mono material for you? Because I think in the design world, in the yarn world, within fabrics, like we're constantly blending. And that we know is an issue for future circularity. And I know that it posed a physical challenge, but also what about the design challenges? Like, what's your feeling about designing with mono materials?
For me, I think it's it gives you a really nice focus. I think to work with one thing, for me feels more like freedom than than having like, oh, this and this, and let's make it into this. I feel like that's where you also gain knowledge about something. So you really dive into one material. Process and a way that I make.
I think often materials are also mixed because people are looking for a certain combination of qualities, whereas if you would really delve into this one fiber and indeed work with how you prepare it, how you treat it, whether you knit it or weave it, or like whatever you do with it, apply more or less twist, or then you can build some of those qualities that you would otherwise find in another material already into that one single material. So
that's for sure also like one of the challenges with making especially fancy yarns, because the idea of a fancy yarn is really like not one component, but like 3 or more.
And it's really nice because actually we achieve like a really different effects with exactly the same material, so it's possible to do it. So we don't need like everything in mono material. And it's also about, I guess, from our perspective, it's like it's also a responsibility to work with mono material as a designer. So you create something, and you have to think also, or I guess, in my opinion, in what's happened next. So after you create your beautiful garment, textile, whatever, what's happening when it ends up in the landfill, and it's possible afterwards to recycle, because this is actually also a design decision. Also, how to.
I wanted to talk also a little bit about randomness, because you spoke about randomness, I think, one of the earlier days, how you felt like you had little control sometimes over the spinning process in some cases, and how that resulted in some more random results. I think it's interesting randomness also because fancy yarns in themselves have much more random feel to them than any other kind of more homogeneous yarn. And I think it's also interesting because I think that the handcraft, you already have this space where a lot more spontaneity can happen, whereas an industrial process is usually about reproduction and like trying to avoid as much randomness as possible. Now after this whole week, like how do you look at that element of randomness?
It's something that I also need to embrace a bit more. What you just said about like for me, when making something by hand, I guess I always the goal is to make it look like it's industrially made. That's kind of I don't know, like something within me that I always feel like, okay, that's when it's good. You know, that's it. But then the randomness. Yes, it's something you need to embrace and see that as a quality instead of a flaw. And I think working with this material for sure is a way to open up for me.
And how are you both like planning to take this further? Like there's so much potential and so many stars.
I'd like to continue like developing some yarns from Berlin and then send it to you guys. So like kind of like continue this like co-creation development of the materials remotely, which is nowadays is very common. And normal, it's actually possible, doable because we have our machinery.
We have the machine here.
Have your machine here, which is great. So we can share the experiments and see, the next
crossover world of fashion, interior.
I see this a little bit like sketching in a way. You know, from here you can also, I guess for me the next step is also to make textiles from the yarns. So a way of like giving an example of like, okay, this can be applied in this way, or this behaves this way. in this kind of textile.
So first production,
Mm-hmm.
production, then making.
And it's a really nice way of working. Like we start from the fiber, step by step, creating like a different type of yarns, and then the next step we create the textile, and then really we can just define the application field because the fiber is like that. So not the other way around.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and in that process, you develop your own language, your own.
There's maybe an idea of a designer or an artist also as some kind of entrepreneur, or you have to, promote yourself. You have to make things like you have to do all the things, and maybe that's also where the knowledge gets lost in a way that you lose in focus. And I think what is nice about this is also the collaboration that you work together.
Collective
and share.
knowledge, like almost like rebuilding a collective knowledge of textile and fashion processes.
Yeah, because you also, of course, we have to be very honest. We can't do it all in one person, right?
Yeah.
So
And maybe we shouldn't.
That's the beauty of the fun.
Yeah.
Also. Yeah. I think that's a beautiful point to finish
Yes.
off on.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
for your
thank you.
efforts.
Thank you for really doing a great week.
Yeah.